Hello, Internet. Welcome back to another edition of Eric's Corner with the Word of Not So Wise. I am way behind on videos. I haven't made one for about 3 months since before the election. I mean, I've done some videos, but not an actual episode. I put down some notes for the 24 election initial response, which obviously I can't really do because it's been too long. So some of my views are going to be kind of daisy chained in with my initial response with things that have happened since then. So, I mean, bear with me when you tell me, oh, there's no way you initially thought of that. Well, maybe I didn't. My opinions and information is going to bleed over a little bit, but I just found it kind of crazy that within 36 hours, Putin talked about trading in the U.S. dollar. Hamas called for a ceasefire. Just all kinds of things just started just happening right away. I mean, it's just almost like Biden has dementia and is a total puppet. Stocks spiked, Bitcoin went way up right away. Uh, New York got rid of their immigrant EBT cards, which uh, that's the most profoundly perplexing thing that these people can't immigrate here legally, but they can fill out the paperwork for free money, you know, and they put them in hotels and everything else. And I just have a very hard time believing that that's actually what happened because I'm not in New York. I haven't seen it for myself. I that's just that's just absolutely crazy to me. The caravans of people flooding into the country got disbanded and everybody went home. I never saw any videos of it, but it's what I was told was happened. And I totally put my notes right behind the camera so I can't actually see them. Let's see here. I talked about Mexico having really strict immigration laws, but yet we're not allowed to have the same thing. You got to speak the language. You got to bring a trade or something to the country. You can't hold political office. You can't vote and all these things, but we welcome people in. I mean, yes, that's great getting people with different perspectives and knowledge from all over the place, but where do their loyalties lie? Omar, her loyalties lie with, well, I don't even remember where the hell she's from, somewhere in Africa, and she's just a total dizzy bimbo who just clearly does not have America's best interest at heart. And people keep saying like, "Oh, well, who's going to pick your crops?" It's quite belittling to just say, "Oh, that's all these people are good for is picking crops." I worked all over the country. I worked construction in places, and the Mexicans, they come in, they're carpenters and skilled tradesmen and do all kinds of great things. Fantastic, but you need to contribute and pay taxes. I was in a bar in Lemoore. I was talking to this dude, and he spoke broken English, but I could understand him pretty well. And basically, our conversation was, he's like, "Yeah, like I'm real careful about who I hang out with because I don't think people like that I'm here illegally." And I was like, "Well, hey, man, are you paying taxes?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Are you contributing?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm doing construction and all these things." I'm like, "Okay, that's not the problem we have." I said, "Are you trying to go through the process and get legal uh, citizenship?" He said, "Yes." I'm like, "Okay, no problem, man. That's not the problem that anybody really has. It's the crime, the sex trafficking, the drugs that are pouring over the border that that we have a gripe with." I mean, I was like, "Well, are you hanging out with these guys?" I know he's not. He's like, "Oh no, of course not." I'm like, "Okay, well, what's the problem, man?" Just don't tell people that. Just work on your English and make sure that we can work well together and everything, and no problem. And I'd really like to think that he's, oh, okay, here's somebody encouraging me who I would or who he would have thought would just be against it and just be like, oh, screw you, whatever, get out of here. Like, well, that's not really anybody's issue. I don't feel like. Well, of course, it's gonna be some people's issue. Just go away and get out of here. Well, no. Um, but it's just incredible to me that you just put them down. You claim to support them, and you just say all they can do are pick crops and do these menial jobs that nobody wants to do. And it's just like, well, so you're okay with them being here as long as you can exploit them for cheap labor, and that's absolutely repulsive to me. Like, why are you talking about these people in such a low light when they really have a lot to offer? Hang on a second. I gotta look at my notes here. Yeah, and it's also crazy to me that people were so um, you're sitting here calling Trump a rapist and all this and a bigot and just racist and all these things, but when Tara Reid, not the actress, another lady, came forward and said Joe Biden literally felt her up down her pants. And there's a call from this girl's mom to the Larry King show talking about how, well, she didn't want to come forward because of who he was and everything. And, this was 30 years later where she's saying something. It wasn't even investigated. An Australian news channel looked into it, and it was found to be very credible. Okay, so when it's Trump or Brett Kavanaugh, then a lynch mob, 100,000 strong, shows up at his door and demands justice for something there's no evidence of. But then you just sweep this one under the rug. And I really wish Joe Rogan would have had her on his show, or maybe he did. I didn't see it or hear about it, which would be awfully curious if he did, and we didn't hear about it. But why does it only seem to matter on one side of the political spectrum? You weaponized sexual assault allegations against one side and just blow it off when the shoe goes on the other foot. It seems like women are taking other women's voice away with wild allegations. Well, maybe they're not, but then on the other side, it's just, oh, well, whatever. And it just gets blown off. And that's just absolutely freaking crazy to me. Let's see here. Again, I'm going way past what my notes are. I'm just kind of going off on a tangent, as I usually do, but that's my show. It's kind of what I do. So, let's see here. And also, what is the deal with protesting? I've talked to a few of my buddies, and they're just like, oh yeah, their voice needs to be heard. It doesn't matter how violent it gets. But then January 6th comes up every time, and oh, well, this protest, and it's like, well, you didn't whine when the Democrats had a protest in a Capitol building. You're not whining about the pro-Palestinian protest that went on in a Capitol building, and there were arrests, and that's all fine. I can't really put it together about how one is justified and the other is horrible. One, Ashley Babbitt got shot by a security guard in January 6th, and that was the only real highlight of that whole protest. But then for 2.5, 3 years, there were riots and people burning down their towns and their cities over Trump getting elected. And there was really no evidence of any kind of voter fraud. But then Biden comes in with a huge spike in extra votes. What is it, like 14 or 17 million more people turned out for the 2020 Biden election. This is not a small margin. We're talking several percent. and then Trump wins by a landslide. I mean, I'm just not I'm just not seeing the logic there. Um, and these are not dumb, uncredible people I'm talking to. They're very sharp and have good, credible opinions. And actually, I've invited a lot of people on the show, but of course they don't live here. They live in Colorado or wherever. Um, you can have a much better conversation when you're sitting here talking in person versus just volleying your rebuttals and opinions back and forth. It just really removes the genuineness of your conversation. So I sit down and have a talk with somebody in person. We usually come to a middle ground and come to an understanding versus just on the internet, and that's part of where the problem comes from. But let's see here. And we, getting like Trump said, America's kind of become a dumping ground for people, and just keep getting accused of being a bigot, and it's like, well, we get a bunch of people from over the place with different upbringings, different creeds, different religions, and these things aren't really going to mesh well. It just, I mean, and again, talking to each other on the internet is part of the big problem. It's like, if you sit down and if we'd all actually sit down and talk to each other, we'd come to a better understanding. And the social injustice. Oh, that was part of the thing too. Like, one side is rioting over social injustice and, oh, you need to help us and support us. The other side is saying, no, the government needs to stay out of it and stop trying to influence things. And I mean both sides are kind of guilty of it. Like, all these people need to live their lives this way. They shouldn't be allowed to do this, that, and the other thing. It's like, well, before you do such a thing, well, is it really destructive to society, or is it just your personal beliefs? And, just don't be destructive to society. And so much of the social injustice is just a whole lot of, well, society needs to do this for me, and society needs to bend over backwards for me. And it's like, well, at what point has society done enough and you need to do things for yourself? If you're just going to go on what I like to call success strike, and hey, until society makes things mainstream and linear for me to be successful and make money and do all these things, I mean, don't plan to accomplish much, because it's not the government's job to make things comfortable and easy for you. It's just not going to happen. You just got to go out there and bust ass. My boss was basically the other day like, well, hey, if you go on to work every single day, we got clearance to do it because we're behind schedule. We're short, man. I'm like, okay, put in the overtime, and I'm making a pretty decent base wage, so overtime is pretty fat, and time to make hay while the sun shines. And it's just like, okay, yeah, it sucks, but you know what? At least I'm home every night. At least I don't have to go out fishing to do it and be away from my kids and everything. I mean, yeah, they only see me in the evenings, but at least they see me every day. Getting way off topic as usual. And a lot of things too, we agree on a destination, but not how to get there. Okay, the government is not going to get you to that destination. It never will. It's too big. Um, like, government needs to foster an environment where everybody can kind of do things for themselves. I mean, I'm all about, you know like myself, I jump around jobs a lot, so we have the government subsidized health insurance for the kids, but I still pay into it, and I still pay into other people's insurance and all this stuff. Okay, cool, that's fine, but I have to go from making 100,000 a year to 140 to make it make sense to actually get private health care. And you know, I mean, again, it's not about my situation. Everybody tries to make it about their own situation. Well, here's what needs to happen because it'll work for me. It's like, well, you got to work the system. You got to do the paperwork and stop acting like you're super oppressed for having to be an adult and do some paperwork. And that's also what blows my mind is how is not getting legally married in the eyes of the tax code oppression? And my buddy calls it recreational outrage. You get mad about shit that doesn't even have anything to do with you. It's like, you know, the victim worshippers, like, oh, you need to help these people. Well, what are you doing to help them? Well, I can't do it. It's like, okay, well, then shut the hell up. Like, you know, unless you're willing to do something yourself to help people. You know, I pick up hitchhikers all the time. You know, I'll go and fix people's, you know, I got a neighbor that's got a heater that goes down. I'll come over and try and fix it or loan them a heater or whatever. And, you know, not to sit here and pat myself on the ass about it, but I mean, that's just kind of what you do for your neighbor. And a little bit different where I am, where we're here in Alaska, where we're a little tighter net community and everybody kind of works together for things like that. But I understand you're in a densely populated area. You know, I've lived in, you know, the cookie cutter houses where everybody's just nut to butt with each other and living in the same, you know, just on the other side of the fence with each other, and you're in each other's space. Oh, that neighbor's dog is barking, or, you know, you just kind of get on each other's nerves. Okay, cool. But you know, I still made friends with some neighbors and we all kind of helped each other out with stuff. Um, a drifter gave me some good advice. Well, a hitchhiker I picked up a lot of years ago, he said, be kind, but be careful. You know, you can be helpful, but I saw a great meme. It said, if you're a giver, have boundaries and limits because takers have none, which is very accurate. And I still feel like I know I've overgiven a lot and so on and so forth. But, and also Epstein's client list, which, you know, as of now is supposedly about to be released. And I was going to call that as I guarantee you that shit's going to come out. You know, if Trump had the dealings that he's accused of having with him, you'd be able to see that list from space. They were doing everything they could to take him out, and they failed. You know, every time they tried, they just failed. And you know, now he's your president. I mean, every statistic is saying that almost everything was better under Trump the last time, and I don't see why it wouldn't be this time. But anyway, that's what I got for my election predictions that are 3 months old now. But anyway, thank you for joining me. Have a good rest of your weekend.